You're fine.
That's nice.
Call the meeting to order for the Board, Mayor, and Alderman for November the 26th, 2019. We'll begin with an invocation, then I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we'll stand, and Alderman Barnhill, if you would offer the invocation, please.
Would you bow, please? Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight in prayer. Thank you for this tremendous country we live in, for all the freedoms that we have. We're especially thankful for the holiday seasons coming up. But we're asking each of us to give us the wisdom that we're mindful of others who may be in more need than we are. We ask that your blessings be on each citizen of Franklin, and especially on those first responders who protect our freedoms, especially the soldiers who are separated from families at Christmas time. All this prayer and blessings we ask in your name, Heavenly Father. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now is an opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda, and I have no speaker cards for that. So we'll move on to communications from the Williamson County Commission. I didn't see anyone here. And so then we'll move on to the minutes for the work session of November the 12th and the Board, Mayor, and Alderman meeting for November the 12th. I entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Barnhill. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll now go on to proclamations, and I would invite those here for the lung cancer proclamation. Please come on up. Yeah, whereas, y'all introduce yourself first, because I know who you are, but the audience doesn't.
My name's Stephen Huff, and I'm a high school teacher at Centennial High School. I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer 2 years ago. So my wife, Emily, and I started a nonprofit to raise awareness for lung cancer research funding and to raise awareness for general awareness, because it's not well known that non-smokers get the disease as well as smokers, and it's important to erase that stigma.
And I can almost just let that be the proclamation. So whereas lung cancer is the origination of abnormal cells that can then invade surrounding tissues or spread and metastasize to other areas of the body, in the truest sense of the word, lung cancer can't be cured. There's always a chance. In some cases, it's very small that lung cancer can recur even many years or decades after it originally found. And whereas 1 in 16 people in the U.S. will be diagnosed with lung cancer in their lifetime, and whereas 60 to 65% of all new lung cancer diagnoses are among people who have never smoked or are former smokers. And whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death, regardless of gender or ethnicity, taking about 156,000 Americans' lives each year. And whereas more lives are lost to lung cancer than to colorectal, breast, and prostate cancers combined, and whereas only 19% of all people diagnosed with lung cancer will survive 5 years or more, but if caught before it spreads, the chance of 5-year survival improves dramatically. And whereas the City of Franklin recognizes the efforts of the Huff Project to raise funds and promote awareness to fight lung cancer, thereby improving the quality of human life for those living with the disease and their caregivers. And whereas this month of November 2019 has been declared Lung Cancer Awareness Month to help spread global awareness of the Huff Project's vision of imagining a world without lung cancer. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Franklin recognizes November 2019 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month and urges all residents to wear white to help global awareness of the Huff Project vision of imagining a world without lung cancer. Kristen, you want to come up? And I'll just ask Kristen to introduce herself.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Allender. I'm the Executive Director of Tennessee Kids Belong. We're a nonprofit statewide, but headquarters is here in Franklin, and we work in foster care, and we're celebrating National Adoption Month this month.
Great. So here's the proclamation. Whereas every child deserves a safe, loving, and permanent family, and whereas we celebrate the life-changing process of adoption and bring our focus to the families in our community who have adopted, and whereas we also recognize the complex nature of adoption, the simultaneous joy of caring for and loving a child coupled with the pain and loss of biological connections and relationships, and whereas there are approximately 365 children in the state of Tennessee available for adoption without an identified pre-adoptive home, and whereas adoptive families, birth families, children waiting to be adopted, and children without permanency are vulnerable and need support, encouragement, and respect of the community, and whereas the Department of Children's Services, Tennessee Kids Belong, the Heart Gallery of Tennessee, and other organizations are bringing attention to the children in Tennessee available for adoption by giving them a face and a voice. Now, therefore, I, Dr. Ken Moore, Mayor of Franklin, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2019 as National Adoption Awareness Month. They have a program that they're partnering with our businesses, offer foster parents discounts at many of our local merchants, including downtown Franklin. And so we're being recognized for that.
Most foster-friendly Main Street in America.
There you go.
And so I think Mr. Stuckey has an announcement.
And don't forget Small Business Saturday's coming up, so you can leverage that even more. I want to highlight a couple things in terms of some dates and upcoming meetings and events. One is we do have a special work session on Wednesday, December 4th at 6 p.m. right here in the boardroom. It is a special work session focused on some education and further discussion around the use of roundabouts as a traffic measure and how those work well. We have the opportunity to bring in a national expert to talk about that. So this is not so much targeted at a specific project, but talked about how they work best in communities and how we might be able to think about them and use them, or think about the potential use of them as well. So there's also something I want to make you aware of. We've had a special event, a race in downtown called the Jingle Bell Run that we've had for over 10 years. And had an error occur in terms of that organizer getting their application in a timely manner. Since it is an event we've supported and worked with for a number of years, it is on Saturday morning, December 7th. It takes place before the Christmas parade. It is based out of Bicentennial Park, so Main Street will stay open prior to when we close it for the parade. But without any objection from the board, I will go ahead and provide them with an administrative approval. The event starts around 8 a.m. and will be completed by around 9:30 on that Saturday morning. But we just had they were unable to get it into us in a timely manner, but we did want to work with them and felt that that would be appropriate if there was not an objection from the board. And then while we're talking about events, we are planning the big Christmas tree lighting on Friday, December 6th, right outside these doors in the square. It'll be a great event. The Freedom Intermediate Choir will be headlining, along with Jars of Clay will be performing with the choir. And we have a special host this year. One of our new residents, Kathy Lee Gifford, will be helping guide that great event. So it starts around 6 o'clock on Friday evening. The actual ceremony will start around, or event will start around 6:45. So be ready and enjoy that. And of course, that leads into the Christmas parade the next day. That steps off around 2 o'clock, right, Gary? Correct. 3 o'clock. 2, okay, I said 2. I thought you held up 3 fingers. So. 2 o'clock on Saturday, December 7th. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on to the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are deemed to be non-controversial and routine in nature by the governing body. They'll be approved as recommended by committee or staff by one motion of the governing body. Tonight, we're considering items number 11 through 27. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second by Alderman Bransford. Any discussion? Ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 4, this is a public hearing, consideration of ordinance 2019-37, an ordinance to adopt a new zoning ordinance and map of the city of Franklin, Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second reading and a public hearing for the zoning ordinance update. This has been a 2-year process to update the ordinance to better reflect Envision Franklin and to make vast improvements to the usability and clarity of our ordinance. There have been 9 public meetings, 7 joint workshops, 6 public outreach presentations, a 5-month public input period since the release of the draft, and this will be the 3rd public hearing. The FMPC held the first public hearing and passed with a recommendation of approval for the ordinance in October. The BOMA held a second public hearing and passed the ordinance on first reading with one amendment, that the Scenic Corridor Overlay District for New Highway 96 West begin at Boyd Mill Pike. Staff has 2 additional amendments to propose tonight to address 2 cleanup items for the planned district, the PD district, that stem from the consolidation of the SDR and SDX districts into the PD district. They involve side and rear yard setbacks and tree canopy retention, where the residential standard was pulled forward from the zoning ordinance as it currently is, but the non-residential and mixed-use standard did not. So these amendments both addressed pulling forward those non-residential and mixed-use requirements. So the first one is the tree canopy retention. It's to carry forward the SDX tree canopy retention requirement for mixed use and non-residential in the PD district. And the staff recommended motion is to amend subsection 17.2.4.b, minimum tree canopy retention, to carry forward the current SDX tree canopy requirements for mixed use and non-residential development in the planned district. The second one is for the setbacks for principal buildings in the PD district. And the setbacks amendment is needed for flexibility to allow property owners to be able to split buildings into different parcels to separate ownership, as is sometimes desired by property owners. An example of this is Parkway Commons, where there is one big long building that contains both a Target and a Kroger, but a property line splits that so that the ownership is maintained separately. The staff recommended motion to address this is to amend the plan district subsection 3.10.7, dimensional standards, for principal building setbacks to instead read, all building setbacks shall be determined by the BOMA through the adoption of a development plan. Buildings shall maintain a minimum spacing of 10 feet, and that's to have clearance around the building. Approval is recommended with the 2 staff cleanup motions. Thank you.
Okay, we're now ready for the public hearing, and I've tried to divide the comment cards into categories, and we'll start out with short-term vacation rental. Listen up for your name, and I'll allow 2 minutes each person. Here's the lineup. Chris Lewis, Lynn McAllister, Chuck Rose, Joey Fuson, Ernie Bacon, and Walter Green.
I'd like to thank everyone for your time. I was going to share a personal story, but I don't believe I have time to. Historically, governments have used their police powers to create and enforce zoning restrictions to preserve or improve the public safety, property values, and the character of residential neighborhoods. The over-restriction of shared temporary housing is ill-suited to address the modern sharing economy and frustrates the goals and purposes for which old economy regulations were designed, which is the preservation of property values and neighborhood character. Arguably more importantly, these restrictions are depriving homeowners of the opportunity to put their property to highest and best use, which constitutes a regulatory taking of private property without just compensation in violation of the 5th and 14th Amendments. Franklin, like much of America, has had private boarding in homes for many years. We aren't new to this. We've been running boarding houses to make ends meet since the founding of our nation, and municipalities do their community a disservice when they prohibit these new economy housing exchanges. Just as in centuries past, these exchanges help preserve property values by providing income to homeowners for mortgage and maintenance. Franklin has created an ordinance so restrictive that it effectively eliminates the potential for a short-term rental of an actual owner-occupied home. 98% of short-term vacation rentals are permitting the 2% with an in-law suite or a privileged view with a second vacant home without justification. Is that reasonable? Owner occupancy, how could a reasonable expectation be to allow visitors absolute access to our entire home and not give us any other option? How could we live reasonably without a single personal item or valuable item that every visitor would have access to? And how could we reasonably remove these items? How is the expectation for owner occupancy that we forego occupancy during the stay? It seems a little counterintuitive. Municipalities across the nation use whole home and non-owner occupied interchangeably. That's because the restriction effectively builds this. Municipalities in short-term rental-driven communities respond not overwhelmingly but unanimously that whole home rentals are the ones that should be restricted, not commanded. Was that my 2 minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Mayor and Alderman. My name's Lynn McAllister, and I am here in my role as president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, representing our members who overwhelmingly are in favor of the ordinance as it is written now, which would maintain the fact that, would allow only for short-term vacation rentals to be in owner-occupied properties. And there's really two approaches to take to this. One is the anecdotes that we've all heard, and I have another one for you, because it happened to a friend of mine who lives in Berry Hill. In the home that he grew up in, his street has now become dotted with Airbnbs. Unfortunately, like has happened in other places in the country, a couple of young men rented a home for an Airbnb for a night, sold tickets to a party. Hundreds of people showed up. The whole neighborhood was flooded. Unfortunately, that evening ended in a shooting. The police and the ambulance had a difficult time getting to the house because there were so many cars parked in the street. I realize that's anecdotal, and I think that we often think things like that are not going to happen in Franklin. Well, my friend who lived in Berry Hill 3 years ago would have never thought that would have happened on the street that he grew up in either. The other approach, the way to look at this, is a bit more ethereal. And that is simply that where I live now, within a half a block, there are 3 Airbnbs. 2 of them are non-owner occupied. And so I think the question that we have to ask ourselves as we wrestle with this is, who are our neighborhoods designed for? Is it for the people who are willing to invest in their property and maintain the homes? Is it for the people who are investing in the community? So as the mayor says, that we have the kind of place that we want to live, work, and play. And is it for the people who are investing in other neighbors? You know, it has been a true pleasure in the 5 years that we have lived on Fair Street to see the Sheridan kids grow up and to see Paula McCord's granddaughter become a young lady. That's because you get to watch your neighbors grow up. Not as nice of a story is that when Brenda, who lives in the apartments, passed away, the neighbors got together and decided who would adopt her really ugly dog, Barney. And we do that because that's what neighbors do. And the best tourist in the world cannot be a neighbor.
My name is Chuck Rose. Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to talk about STVRs as well. Not against STVRs. What I am against is non-owner occupied STVRs. I've been in Franklin for 28 years. Thank you. And I've been downtown Franklin for 2.5 years. And every one of my friends, when I tell them I moved to downtown Franklin, ask me, is it as good as you thought it was? I said, it's actually better. And I'll tell you why. Everybody refers to Franklin as the character of the community. Without a community, you cannot have character that we all enjoy and love here. Without a community, you don't have people. What I've seen in the 2.5 years here, I've seen more and more people buying up these homes and using them as rentals, not living on the property, and then therefore we lose the people, we lose the neighborhoods, we lose the community, and we lose the character. Just today, if you read the Tennessean, you saw where the greater Nashville area is the third hottest investor real estate market in the country. What that means is there's a lot of people coming into our community, in our town, who have no interest in living here. They're gonna live somewhere else, buying this up and using this as a hotel. A hotel is a business, in my opinion. These are hotels with no one on the property to police the property, without someone paying attention to who's doing what in that home. And I've got 5 of 7 homes behind me that this is happening in. We have no idea who the people are coming in our community, and I don't think I'd need to tell you or share with you stories of what happens when no one is policing their property. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Joey Fuson. I'm an attorney, so this may be hard to stay within 2 minutes. I'll do my best. I'm from
We're
the
only paying you for 2.
That's right, for 2. So I grew up in this area. I'm born and raised in the Franklin area. I live in Brentwood, 9230 Brushboro. I'm one of the people that actually doesn't live in a short-term vacation rental that has an operating vacation rental right down the street. We purchased this property, me and my family, basically back about 1.5 years ago. We spent a large amount of money at 305 Church Street. That's where our house is, the little Franklin house. And we live, within 8 miles away from the location. We have operated that, and we have seen, maybe different than some of the anecdotes I heard earlier, I've had, in 6 months of rentals, nothing but amazing people come into our rental. Nothing but amazing people that you would want to come shop in the downtown area. I'm serious. I look back at our reviews, and apparently they're all women, so my wife's done a good job of decorating, but it's all people, weddings, Civil War stuff, shopping in downtown Franklin, going to Arrington, not the bachelorette parties, not the stuff that maybe we think is gonna come down here. That's not what I've seen, and I've got real experience. We keep track of that property. We look at it every day. We have cameras on the property. The people who have come to our residence are amazing people, so I just wanna point that out to the group. Secondly, I understand that, our property's in an OR zone, and I would just encourage you, our property is the perfect type of place. We're supposedly, according to the thing, a transition between higher intensity commercial and residential. We are the type of area, if you have issues in residents and neighborhoods, I would encourage you to look for other options to regulate that, other caps and things that you could do, which you guys are doing. But I wouldn't want you to extend it to the downtown area, to the OR zone, to the commercial zones. These are the type of places we want these people coming into downtown. We don't want hotels to be the only option, because a lot of people don't want to stay at hotels. They don't want to do that, but they want to come down, spend their money, and enjoy this amazing city. I would encourage you guys too. I know there's some amendments that may be brought up. One about a local owner exception that would allow people either who are local owners within 25 miles to own properties in these residential areas or in other applicable use regulation areas. And I would encourage you to support that amendment, because that would allow people like me who do want to purchase up residential places that this would apply to and keep their hands on it, because we are able to keep our hands on these properties. And I would encourage you to support those amendments. Thank you.
Good afternoon and happy Thanksgiving. My name's Ernie Bacon. I live at 224 4th Avenue South, and I have been a resident there within a block and a half of City Hall for the last 25 years. I have previously spoken in support of the short-term rental ordinance as the staff has proposed. I continue for that support. I urge BOMA tonight to pass the second reading, as you did the first, on the proposed Zone Franklin. I want to thank the effort that went into the Zone Franklin process, and many of us have attended most, if not all, of the sessions relative to this subject. I urge tonight that BOMA does not get confused with amendments, changes, or controversies about this ordinance. You have it before you. You've wrestled with it. You've lived with it. I urge passage as it is, knowing full well that we'll have the opportunity over time to tweak as experience indicates. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Walter Green. I live at 227 4th Avenue South. And as I've spoken here a couple of times, once to 2 minutes, once to about 10 seconds over, I'm going to be short and say, first of all, thank you to everyone for the great amount of work that went into the zoning ordinance update, and to simply state that I encourage BOMA to implement the zoning ordinance update as in its current form. Thank you so much.
And now, I hope I've got everybody categorized right. I have a group of people to speak about flood zone regulations as far as the new zoning ordinance. So if I put you in the wrong spot, my apologies, and here's the order. Michael Good, Martin Dunn, Brian Laster, Patrick Baggett, Roger Lindsay, Amy Smith, Gary Luffman, and Paul Lebowitz.
Good evening. My name is Michael Good. My wife and I are recent homeowners in the wonderful city of Franklin. We love it here. We live on Ewingville Drive and are one of the homes included in the Army Corps of Engineers home raising project. While we are thankful for the opportunity to participate in this program and for the city's involvement, we have a couple major reservations. The main one is the height with which we'd have to raise. The current regulations would require us to raise our home 8 feet. And we have major concerns about all the steps we would need to get our family in and out of our home with the raise to that height, and then also the aesthetics with that type of change. We're asking that you please consider changing the 3-foot freeboard requirement to a 1-foot freeboard requirement for existing residential structures, a more common industry standard. I looked at some of the surrounding cities and states to see what a common freeboard requirement was, and I found that the 1-foot height was much more common than the 3-foot height. Just some of the cities with a 1-foot requirement are nearby cities like Knoxville and Cookeville and Louisville. So I'd ask that we wouldn't unnecessarily burden homeowners with the perhaps excessive height. Additionally, we ask that you would consider shortening the monitoring period for substantial improvement expenditures on residential structures from 10 years to a 5-year period. This change will help us better improve and maintain our homes. It will allow new homeowners, such as my wife and I, to invest in our home and property and ultimately invest in the city of Franklin. Thank you.
I'm Martin Dunn. I live at 147 Lancaster Drive. And during the 2010 flood, I was flooded. I am also a homeowner of one of the 35 houses that the Corps has selected for raising. And it's taken us 9 years to get to this point, but it looks like we're underway as far as the process is concerned to raise the houses. We haven't got any status update, so we don't know when it's going to be raised. But the Corps decided on these 35 houses based on a cost benefit for raising them 3 feet above the flood level. Now, my concern is if the zoning is changed where it's only 1 foot, how is that going to affect the current process that's going on? Will the Corps have to go back and refigure all this, and we'll have to start on another 9-year period? So before you make any changes, we need to make sure it's not going to affect the current project. And the other thing is, how is it going to affect flood insurance? Because it just logic tells me that if we drop it 2 feet, the flood insurance is going to be higher. So I propose that you do not change what's in the zoning now and perhaps look at it at a later date. Thank you.
Mayor Moore and Alderman, my name is Brian Laster. I live at 424 Murfreesboro Road, and my home is in the floodplain. And I'm here today because I'm advocating not just for my wife and myself, but for my neighbors. And really, I'm asking the board to consider amending two definitions. And these definitions really aren't even found in the floodplain ordinance. They're found way back in the back. And they're definitions about substantial improvements and substantial damage. So in that current proposed floodplain ordinance, we can only spend on repairs and upgrades up to 50% of our structure's tax appraised value, plus 15% in a 10-year period. Now, market value is determined solely by the tax assessor of the county and not by a licensed appraiser. If we spend over the 50% of that market value in a 10-year period, we are required to raise our homes 6 to 10 feet above the ground level at a cost of $60,000 to $130,000. Now, this is what that means to us. So my wife and I, we decide we want to remodel our kitchen and bath in our home. And we go and we find out that currently our tax assessed value on our value is $166,000, a half a mile down the street. So we can spend half that amount. Now that's $83,000. Now I would hope we could do that on a kitchen and a bath. But here's the rub. That accumulates over 10 years. So a tree falls on the house, a car drives off Murfreesboro Road and hits the house, we have a small fire, then in order to get a permit to make that repair, we have to spend $60,000 to $130,000 to raise the house just to make that repair. So this is what I'm asking, that the board would consider amending the tracked cumulative costs from 10 years to 5 years in the substantial improvement and substantial damage definitions, and to add the option of using a Tennessee certified appraiser to determine market value. Now, there's no change in this to our Class 8 designation, no change to insurance rates or discounts. These well within FEMA guidelines. However, it would assist homeowners in maintaining their homes and making the necessary repairs. And I appreciate your time and consideration.
Hello, my name is Amy Smith. I live at 548 Franklin Road, and I'm here to support my property in the new Envision rezoning Franklin ordinance for general office. Thank you.
Patrick Baggett, I'm at 422 Murfreesboro Road, neighbors with my friend Brian here, and thank you all for many of you we've been able to chat about this flood zone change. And it's true, it's the same as what it was on the prior, but this process that the planning staff has done a tremendous job going through was for, and the citizen comment was to make changes that the citizens felt like we wanted made. And so that's why this is pertinent, it is important. I'd like to really encourage you to consider changing the freeboard from 3 feet to 1 feet. Now, for the gentleman in Lancaster, of course, we don't want that to affect his ability to obtain the project funding that they have. Obviously, we not want that to be the detriment of that project or those projects. But it is important that as a city that we look at these specifics, the 10 to 5 year, the 3 to 1. And not impose maximums where they're not necessary, possibly, and we feel like they're not. And if you've been out to our house and seen the tape on the side of the house and see how high the 3 foot over base flood is, I think it begins to make clearer and clearer sense. The 3 to 1 foot, if at 3 feet, there'd be water right here in this very room, probably 2 feet into the square. So some things that just logically we'd love for you all to take up, and the 3 to 1 foot is the item that I'd like to specifically ask for. We want to be productive and proactive and positive. The second thing is we want to form a citizen committee, public-private with staff, to find the other ways that the NFIP and CRS so we can get more discounts for flood insurance buyers. You know, there's about 30% more that we're not obtaining right now as a community, and there's some easy and free, free ways that we can collaborate and get those discounts down. And that's, we don't just want a reduction in the ordinance. We want to, be a positive contributor to the community and hopefully get some more discounts for flood insurance through those other provisions. Thank you.
Mayor, Board of Aldermen, my name is Roger Lindsay. I've been a resident of Franklin for 26 years now, and I feel like I've spent most of that time down here. I've been on the Planning Commission for at least 16 years, and I've been the chairman of the Stormwater Appeals Board for about 10 years, I think, since the Appeals Board was instituted through the development of the stormwater user fee, the stormwater regulations. But I want to just kind of touch on some of these items because I am a floodplain manager. It's all I do every day. I'm the floodplain administrator for the city of Nashville, and I was personally involved in the permitting of over 10,000 structures that flooded during the 2010 flood. And we dealt with, and we met one-on-one. I met typically with the MAD people, those that had no recourse, those that were substantially damaged, those that were faced with elevating their structures. And it's a hard discussion to have. But the reality is that as we have those discussions, we find out that over and over, the whole repetitive loss process leads us to find that in many cases, there's a lady that was written up in the newspaper just this week in Brentwood who moved into a house knowing that it had flooded on May of 2010 and found out 6 months later from FEMA that she had 6 prior flood claims on her house. Her house had flooded 6 or 7 times. And those are the people that I call the subsequent victims, because oftentimes a builder or developer may object to having to raise a house to a freeboard standard. And in Nashville, our freeboard is 4 feet, not 3 feet. But I was involved in writing the regulations here. We settled on 3 feet, and that's what it's been ever since. But what 3 feet does for you is that it puts your home and your belongings and your lives and the lives of emergency responders in a lower risk scenario, so that when these subsequent events happen, that you are less subject to the potential for damage, loss of life and loss of property. I could talk for 30 minutes, but my time is up. I just want to reinforce, I think, the point that was made by one of the fellow speakers here tonight, is that I am open, as I think other members of the Stormwater Appeals Board are, to engage in some discussions that we have kind of after the first of the year, perhaps, that we really get into a discussion that evaluates some of the concerns raised by residents of these areas, while at the same time acknowledging, some of the kinds of issues that we've experienced firsthand. So with that, I'll cede my time, Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor, Alderman, I'm not here to speak on the floodplain. I'm here to speak on the zoning map update. Not the zoning ordinance, but the zoning map update. And it's just a procedure to bring to your attention that there was an error in the past, and as this map progresses forward very soon in December, it's also going to show there was a possible error before the existing map that you have on the wall behind you. I'm speaking for Mr. Lance Stoddard, who owns property on Lewisburg Avenue or Lewisburg Pike, which is next to it's called Mid-South Mulch, next to the Husky Truss and Lumber Company. Husky Lumber and Trust is an industrial zone, but this map presently shows his property, which is right beside it, a small tract, as residential. He asked me to look into the zoning of the property prior to this map, because he has a map of when he subdivided the property that shows his parcel and his business as industrial property. It was approved by the city. If the error occurred in 2007 and into the present zoning ordinance and zoning map, then that error will proceed into this new zoning ordinance and map. He has many issues on the property. He has many violations on the property that is presently being worked out by 3 departments in the city of Franklin. Mr. Girth is aware of it, and there are conditions for his approval in his site plan that he has prepared. He is aware of it. He is only here to bring to your attention the error in 2002, 2003, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, And he doesn't want this area to go into another new zoning map. And I think the city has agreed that they will look into it as long as he continues to make his corrections on his property. So it's just a matter of record and bringing it to your attention. That's all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Lebovitz. I'm here representing the Housing Commission. I'm the vice chair. The Housing Commission was examining the new ordinance, and the one that we are questioning involves the ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. What was attached to it, if you're not familiar with it, I know it's a big document, is that in the past year or so, in past years, this was really just reserved for the historic zoning area or the downtown. It's being extended into some other areas where you could put up a separate small building behind a residence. What was attached to the ordinance as stated is that the primary residence has to be owner occupied for you to put up this accessory dwelling unit. Well, the Housing Commission feels we need anybody that wants to, and that includes investors, be able to put up accessory dwelling units. You know, if you're going to do that over in Hill Estates and Cadet, which is included in this new zoning ordinance, you're not exactly going to get a high-end unit, and that's where our goals are. We need to see rents $700, $900, anything less than $1,000. We feel if you go ahead and you said, oh, it can only be owner-occupied, well, what happens when that person sells? Well, it's going to go to somebody else, and it could be an investor, and you can't prevent that. We think that if you keep this attachment that you have to be owner-occupied to build an ADU, that needs to go away, and the market needs to be opened so that we can have a few investors come in, just like myself. I own a property over there. And I would like to tell you, not every lot is good for an accessory dwelling unit, but I want to give you an example of some that are, and how in Hill Estates alone, there's a dozen lots that are 300 feet deep. Does everybody understand that's a football field? Now, I happen to own one, and the house is 40 feet from the street, and I have a 255-foot field in the back. So I'm asking that the there'll be an amendment that removes the owner occupancy requirement. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any more speaker cards. Have I ignored somebody that gave me one? I don't see any. I'm going to close the public hearing. I would entertain a motion to approve, and then I'll entertain amendments after that.
Move to approve the ordinance.
Appropriate motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I think Alderman Peterson has several amendments that Ms. Dannenfelser mentioned.
That's right. And I believe the first one was the motion to amend subsection 17.2.4.b, minimum tree canopy retention, to carry forward the current SDX tree canopy requirements for mixed use and non-residential development in the planned district.
Second.
Appropriate amendment and appropriate motion second. Any discussion on it?
And would you say that again, it's 7 point what? 7.2.4B.
17?
17.2.4B. And we would be carrying forward the current SDX canopy requirements for the mixed-use and non-residential development. You know, that's what our planned district SDX is. It's not SDR.
Any other discussion or comments or questions? Seeing none, ready to vote on the amendment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. I think you have a second amendment.
Yes, sir. Actually, I have three, I think, that they're asking me to do. This is, I move to amend the planned district subsection 3.10.7 dimensional standards for principal building setbacks to instead now read, all building setbacks shall be determined by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen through the adoption of a development plan. Buildings shall maintain a minimum spacing of 10 feet. And if I could just do the explanation on that, we talked about the buildings that are, they're in one building, but they're actually owned by two entities.
Do I need to second that part or wait till she?
You can go ahead and second that one.
Second.
Okay. The dimensional standards amendment, is there any discussion on that? Seeing none?
I have a question for Ann.
Sure, go ahead.
Ann, can you explain that a little bit more, why you're proposing that? What is the essence of your concern?
Okay, and then the example that was given was that a Kroger and Target are together in one building, but they're two separate entities that own the parts of the building.
So they're separate.
And so that would, it said, in this case, it would be determined by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen whenever we approve the adoption of the development plan.
And you're asking that to come to BOMA?
Yes, that would.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ready to vote on, for the amendment concerning dimensional standards? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. I'll still recognize you for an additional amendment, Alderman Peterson.
This one also would, is a motion to amend the scenic corridor overlay district. And now let me just stop to say, remember, we had an amendment at our meeting last time, but this is going to be more, it's going to be specific in some ways.
More clarification.
Yes, thank you for clarification. I move to amend the scenic corridor overlay district for new Highway 96 West so that the 300-foot setback on the south side of new Highway 96 West is located between Boyd Mill Pike and the western edge of the UGB. The setback on the north side of new Highway 96 West is located between Mack Hatcher Parkway and the western edge of the UGB. I believe this kind of refines what we passed as the amendment last time.
I'll second that.
Appropriate motion second, open for discussion.
I definitely had a question on that. So then, if you're saying Mack Hatcher West, that's putting back in
The north side.
to the the north side.
That's on the north side.
Yes, but we took out the north side. I mean, my intentions were to take out the north side, and I think they want it clarified. So if we vote for your amendment, then the frontage of West Haven is all put back into the 300. Ann Amelia, all of those are put back.
No.
Because you said,
We'll let-
maybe I misunderstood that, but I heard it to be the north side and west of the new Mack Hatcher. That would include.
But that's on the north side of Highway 9.
North.
But let-
West Haven's on the south,
And Animalia's on the side.
and Animalia's on the
Yes,
south.
but then you said something about the south.
I'm
sorry,
going
go
to
ahead.
let
All right.
Kelly
All
give
right.
some clarification here.
The citizen at the previous public hearing did request that the south side be removed from the scenic corridor overlay.
Correct.
And begin it at Boyd Mill Pike. The amendment that was made last time removed all of the scenic corridor overlay, both north and south, and began that at Boyd Mill Pike.
So yours is still keeping in the south?
And the north side is in the ordinance today. It's a 300-foot setback that's required as part of the character area overlay district.
So just to clarify, then your amendment would still allow the south side to stay out of that and start at Boyd Mill Pike?
That is correct.
Correct, all right, thank you. I just heard her
Before
wrong.
you sit
Sorry.
down, let me, thank you. Which Boyd Mill?
Well, that's what they told me.
Which
Mill.
Boyd Mill?
Boyd
One comes
Mill
out,
Pike.
one comes out up at Carlisle, and one goes back in would be west of West Haven.
Yes.
There are 3 points of access, but 2 of them are Boyd Mill Avenue that are closer to town. The one that is Boyd Mill Pike is the one west of Animalia.
The intent was, and I'm gonna make it as simple as possible. The intent was to eliminate the 300-foot setback from the entrance of West Haven, that entrance, to Boyd Mill before you get to the golf course. That was the intent of what we intended to do. Does this do that without avenues and streets and whatever else in there?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, well, so we know what the intent was.
Yes, right,
You're on
Exactly.
record now.
Thank you.
exactly.
That's right, and of course, the planning staff had written this out for me to say.
Okay, we have an appropriate amendment to the original motion, and it's been seconded. I'm ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Any other? Alderman McClendon.
First one, a simple one, I think. Currently, golf courses, if I'm not mistaken, are permitted in civic institutional under our current zoning, is that correct?
Correct.
Golf courses are permitted under civic institutional today.
They're not a specific use
Okay.
today, but they are permitted as part of one of the recreation-type uses in our current ordinance.
Okay, so today, one could build a golf course in a civic institution without without rezoning.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Under the proposed zoning ordinance, golf courses would be permitted only in a planned district. Correct?
I need to clarify my previous statement. It would involve a development plan review process in the
Right.
CI district for a golf course.
But it wouldn't require a rezoning at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
It
today.
would require a development plan to be
Right.
approved.
Okay,
Which would come before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
okay, that's fine. But under the proposed zoning ordinance, golf courses would be permitted only in a planned, in a PD zone.
That's the way that we converted from the current ordinance to the proposed ordinance. The only way to have that approval come before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is through the development plan currently. And so, to us, it made sense to put that in the plan district, so that still comes before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for
Okay.
approval.
So would a piece of property currently zoned civic institutional become PD by default? Here's what I'm driving at. There's a golf course that we've all talked about for a long time, proposing to expand. It's currently zoned civic institutional. Would this zoning ordinance change require them to rezone the property versus proceed with a plan, with a design review?
It would involve rezoning to a PD with a development plan as part of that.
Okay, so this may apply to only one, but there is still a civic institutional zone category under the new zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. My intent is to permit the existing civic institutional property that we have approved for a lease to become a golf course, to proceed without the necessity of rezoning merely because of the passage of this ordinance. So my motion is that we make golf courses a permitted use in the CI district in 5.1.3. As I say that, it may be that the only place this would ever apply is the one place I have in mind. It seems likely that it would be the only place that it would apply.
The impact there is that it would come through as a site plan, and it wouldn't come through as a development plan. It wouldn't come to, before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
But if it were
In
zoned
general.
CI,
If it were zoned CI in
Okay.
the new ordinance.
this may be putting you on the spot, but can you think of anywhere that would be 200 acres that's currently zoned CI that would be remotely possible to become a golf course other than the one we have in mind?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, so it's I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's likely that this amendment would affect one and only one piece of property, which is knowable in advance.
Would you restate your?
My motion is to make golf courses a permitted use in the CI district on page 82, with the belief that all this is really doing is permitting the golf course that's over on Spencer Creek that we're in discussions with to lease the city property across Mac Hatcher, which is zone CI, to proceed with their plan without stepping back and having to do a full rezoning.
If I'm not mistaken, I don't think they've ever submitted any plan, period, to the staff. They've been instructed to come forward several times. They've promised several times to come forward with a proposal, and they've yet to do it. So.
All that may be true.
And I think if they had already submitted, probably your motion wouldn't be necessary. But I just do want to make that point, that
All that may be
they've not
true.
submitted
I'm just trying to
anything.
spare them from having to go through, to go through rezoning to get to the result that we've already endorsed.
Would you like to make a comment, Mr. Gurr?
If I may, and because of some uncertainty here, coupled with what Mayor Moore's comments, where we have requested multiple times for them to submit, and given previous conversations and their request for multiple modifications to our development requirements, which only can be achieved currently through a development plan amendment, it still may end up resulting in that. But absent of receiving anything for a long time, we just have nothing to work with. But with respect to your amendment, Vice Mayor McClendon, I think we need to look a little bit deeper and get back with you prior to the December 10th meeting.
Is there a second to the amendment that's proposed by the Vice Mayor?
I'll second it for discussion purposes
Okay.
too. And I have a comment.
Appropriate, go ahead with your comment.
I would just say, Vernon, I believe that it's my understanding, I may be wrong here, but that the 30-year, they were told that their 99-year that they have applied for all along was told that they only could do a 30-year lease, and that you're talking about something different with them now. But you have been talking with them. It's not like they haven't been in here, because I was in a conversation with.
I'm going to go ahead and close this
So, I'm
conversation.
just
We're going to focus
asking.
only on the amendment.
So
I'll tell you,
I,
okay, I'm gonna withdraw my motion. We'll revisit this on third
Okay.
reading. And with that, I do have another question for staff on an unrelated subject.
Go ahead.
As to the floodplain issues, would lowering the freeboard requirement from 3 to 1 result in an impact on the current project that we're doing with FEMA to co-fund the raising of the 35 houses or whatever we've decided to do?
I don't know if we know the exact answer to that, given the fact that we don't do the cost-benefit analysis, the Army Corps does. And we've asked them to redo it about 3 different times at least. That has expanded the number of homes involved, but it always came back to the 3-foot standard. So I don't know to what extent, I don't think any of us knows to what extent that changes their math on the cost-benefit.
Could we find that out before third reading?
We can sure try.
Same question for the 10 years versus 5 years.
Yeah.
look back on substantial improvements and substantial damage or whatever it was. I'd like to know whether or not doing an amendment to the freeboard and/or the 10 years to 5 years look back for renovation or investment or expense would, A, impact the project that we have funded for the raising of the specific homes, and B, would it change anything with respect to our FEMA ratings or anything else?
I'm gonna,
And if we know the answer, great, and if we don't know, could we know? Because, and maybe we can't, but that seems like a knowable, it seems like a gettable answer.
Hi, I cannot answer on the core aspect of it. As far as would it change our ratings with CRS community rating system? Yes, it will impact that. We are allotted 90 points for a 10-year cumulative. We're going to be losing points with the community rating system with the enactment of the new CRS. They update their program every 3 years. Points that we have been receiving for elevation certificates are going to go away. We're not going to get credit points for those anymore. So those points that we lose from the elevation certificates and the 90 points for the cumulative will impact. Those two in itself are enough to drop us to back to a 9.
Okay, so the answer is for sure with respect to the CRS and maybe with respect to the project.
Yes, I can't answer for that
Okay.
project.
well, if I could just interject, because we've kind of gotten off of the motions and the amendments, but, you know, since there's been no change from the old zoning ordinance to the new zoning ordinance, but there's been a lot of inquiries concerning the things that you've mentioned, the plan was to, after the zoning ordinance is planned, to take a lot of time and study those issues and then bring them back to the board. I think probably the complexity, if I understand correctly, the complexity of it is such that it's not a decision that we can make in one meeting and one night. It's going to take a number of meetings and a number of experts such as Mr. Lindsay, who was here tonight, to have those discussions, and people like Mr. Baggett that seems to have some knowledge also.
I don't want to do anything rashly, but sometimes there are clear answers, and if only we know them, we can make a decision. What I hear is there's a clear answer as to the community rating systems, and there's not a clear answer as to the impact on our ongoing raising project. Okay.
Correct.
That said, I don't have a motion on that tonight. I do have other questions for staff, if I may, Mayor.
Well, I'd like to really continue on with this.
I am. Well, my
mean, as far as
questions
the-
might lead to a motion.
Some of us have some other motions we'd like.
Well, I'm going to turn to the short-term rentals, because I'd like to flesh that out a little bit before we start making motions. And because whether you put the motion first or my questions first, I'm going to have the same questions about whatever motions, including the ones that are intended.
Are we skipping over question, point of order?
Go ahead, I'm deciding what I'm going to do, but you can.
So we're talking about this one subject right now with the flood and FEMA. Could we continue with that? Because I do have a motion on that particular one before we jump to short-term rentals.
I was going to ask Mr. McClendon, the vice mayor, to continue on, but if he wants to let you proceed with that discussion on the short-term vacation rentals.
No,
I mean, he wants to pick up on flood.
I mean, on
I
flood.
want to, I haven't, just a short motion.
I will yield for the purpose of that motion. I'd like to reclaim my time after that.
You sound like a TV guy.
Yeah. You sound like
Y'all
a
made
jerk.
me vice mayor.
Yes, that's right.
90 seconds is expanded, hasn't it?
Well said. All right, Mr. Mayor, okay.
Do you have an amendment
I
to
do.
the motion?
I do.
Proceed, please.
So if we look at the rational and clear that Dana brought up, if you want to be rational and clear.
We do.
Yes, so this does not, this is within FEMA guidelines. It does not change the insurance, and it also does not affect our rating, I do not believe. If we talk about the substantial damage that was brought up and the substantial improvement within the FFO overlay district. So I've got two amendments. Number one, I'd like to move to amend the substantial damage definition that's found in Chapter 23, page 385 of the new zoning ordinance to read, and I will highlight the changes. The market value is the assessed value of the structure per the Williamson County Property Assessor, and this is the addition, or the Tennessee State Certified Appraiser. So we're just adding in Tennessee State Certified Appraiser, which Nashville also does. And to continue, plus an additional 15% of that assessed value in calculating the substantial damage construction improvement costs are tracked cumulatively over, and this is the change, 5-year period rather than a 10-year period. Because if you have damage, they have to wait a whole 10 years to do any more improvements if they spent that 50% of their appraised value. So the additions in here are to add, along with the Williamson County Property Assessor, is to add Tennessee State Certified or Tennessee State Certified Appraiser, and take the 10-year to 5-year. Those are my changes, and that's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Appropriate motion second. Open for discussion. Alderman Martin.
I think this is entirely too complicated and too, as you said, complex to even talk about this now. We talked about this earlier, and these residents have come forth with all of this information that I'm trying to disseminate, and I think everybody else is too. I would suggest that we do what the mayor said. Go on and pass the ordinance with no changes, and then sit down and discuss this and study it with professionals. I don't think we can do this, and I don't think it's fair to the residents to even talk about this now without really working it out.
Other comments?
I totally disagree, Margaret. I think it is our responsibility to know this and study this, and I think that this has come before us multiple times. The amendment I just proposed, of course, as I said, is within FEMA guidelines. It does not alter the insurance or affect our rating as well. So it's innocuous compared to if we're changing from 3 feet to 1 feet, that's different. So,
Alderman Speedy.
I mean, I thought we just heard that if we went from 10 to 5, we lose 90 points.
Yeah.
Or how many points do we get at 5 years? I mean,
That is
so
correct.
that's why I think it becomes too complex. And I think
don't think so.
what the citizens have said is they are open to, as long as we know we are going to study this, there are 7 areas in the community rating center system and we have a 0.
Oh.
Or maybe if we go from 90 to 45, 10 foot to 5, but we pick up 500 more points, I think that's where we have to have an in-depth discussion.
I'm going to have Mr. Stuckey make a comment.
Yeah, I think, following up on what was said previously, there are a lot of elements to this. And the 2 that have been mentioned, I think, need to be at the top of the list when we review it, but there are a lot of other aspects to this. And to just pick a couple things and try to tweak them on the fly when we know it has impact on the rating system, and we know it has some other potential implications, we're far better served to take a step back and do a more comprehensive review that also engages a broader group of property owners in making this decision and make a fully informed decision that looks at the whole field, not just a couple items that I agree should be at the top of the list when we have the discussion, but there are other aspects as well. Let's take a more complete approach to this, engage our community, and come back to you and make that a big part of our work plan for next year.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in agreement with that as well. I think we do need to step back. I second the motion because I think it's very important for us to talk about things. But I would like to see us move this to the next phase of a community/staff committee to work on this and come back with the details worked out. So I would be in support of that. Oh, and that is my motion.
So we have a
That's an
amendment
amendment?
to the amendment.
Okay, amendment
And
to
there's a
the,
second to the amendment by Alderman Peterson.
which is to move this to, this discussion about the details and working out the nuance of these issues to a committee, so designated by the city administrator and the mayor.
Any discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
I don't think committee's the right word.
Yeah, I don't,
Task force or whatever,
Study.
study.
Alderman Barnhill, or you want to be recognized?
on occasion.
I knew I shouldn't have yielded.
This is your
I
moment
just
in
knew
time.
it.
Sorry, I thought I was being a.
Maybe not tonight.
Well, we'll move on.
I'm not sure what Pearl is,
She's, if my understanding, if I could paraphrase, she wants
but you don't
to,
need a motion and an amendment and all of that to have this
Probably
go
true.
back
Okay, what do I,
for further study. All we need to do, if we want to do that, is to pass the amendment as is, with the understanding that there will be additional study involved in this. My only concern, well, no, I've got several. But my one concern is that we don't jeopardize the project that we've got going now. And that's the 35 homes that we've set out, and we've spent 2 years or more dealing with that.
Yeah.
And we've got to a point where now we can actually handle some of that. I don't want to jeopardize that. I don't mind looking at 3 feet, 1 feet. I don't mind looking at 45 points, 90 points, whatever else it is. But I would be very, very disappointed if we did anything that affects that particular project as it stands right now.
and I appreciate your comment that there's no need to do that, but we do have a motion on the floor with a second to move this to a study session in the future with community experts and people of community interest. And so I'll still entertain some discussion on that
I have a
particular
question for
amendment to the
staff.
amendment.
I have a
Go
question
ahead.
for legal. As I understand Alderman Bransford's motion, it's basically to send this proposed amendment regarding the 10-year to 5-year reach back to a committee for further study. If that, and the free board from 3 to 1. If that amendment were passed, would that take this whole ordinance and lay it on the table or not?
What do you mean, the whole zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Move the mic over.
I'm concerned that
I am
passing
too.
this amendment, Alderman Bransford's amendment, which I think is a good idea, I'm concerned that passing the amendment in a parliamentary procedural way would take our entire zoning ordinance to committee.
That's not how I read it. How I read it, your motion, or your amendment to the main motion, was only to amend the definition of substantial damage.
Just the definitions.
Her amendment to that was to take this definition of substantial damage to a task force, and only this. It really doesn't even address all the other floodplain issues, only substantial
Only
damage
mine.
and nothing else. So it really is very
Would
limiting.
Would it not be cleaner, with all due respect to my fellow aldermen, to defeat Alderman Berger's motion with the or
The
have it
amendment.
withdrawn, amendment?
There's an amendment.
Well, withdraw Ms. Bransford's amendment, defeat Alderman Berger's amendment, with the understanding that we're going to do exactly what Alderman Bransford has asked, so that Alderman Berger can make the case for her amendment to be done later.
If you want to include other topics, yes. If all you're worried about is substantial damage definition, but if you, it sounds like to me you guys really want to study the whole flood issue, and that is a better way to get at the whole topic.
And to be clear, staff is recommending a full review of the flood regs with those components included, and those components is probably top items on that list, but there are more elements to be explored and make sure we're doing this right as we look at the whole of the flood
And I'm in
regulations.
agreement with that, Mr. Mayor, the whole floodplain component of this ordinance.
So are you,
So what I need to
You're
do,
withdrawing
withdraw,
your
I withdraw my motion, I withdraw my motion.
and Alderman,
So back to my amendment.
and back to your
And I
amendment?
have one comment before we defeat my amendment. I can't vote against my own amendment.
You
But-
can withdraw it.
I could withdraw it, and I may. But I would like to say one thing. When I was looking at the scores, we're talking about these scores, and we're going to lose some. So I want to make this clear, if we're going to go to study on this, that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 zeros that we have no points for. And I do not see why we do not have scores in that column for flood warning and response. That's a no-brainer to me that we should have a lot of, Williamson County doesn't have either, but the average points for that is 254, and we have 0. And
All right, I'm gonna call
I
you,
Yeah.
this does not have anything to do with substantial structural damage.
It
You've
doesn't,
gone-
but if we're going to defeat my amendment, I want to make sure that this is pointed out, that we need to go and study this and find out ways that we can do the flood management planning, and we can do flood protection, the drainage system management, flood warning and response, to take the zeros out and add on there, and we might even be able to
Call
get
the
up to
question.
7 or 6. Thanks. I withdraw my motion.
I withdraw my call.
So we're back to the original motion. Are any,
Could I try a simpler one?
But I yielded only for the purpose of that.
That's right. So it's back to you.
And I
Mayor, if I
withdraw
may.
my occasional.
you may, Vice Mayor, with
Thank
all
you,
due
Mayor.
respect.
Thank you, Mayor. I try to keep these things on track. As to the short-term rentals, as I understand it, the proposed ordinance would require any short-term rental to be owner-occupied.
That is incorrect.
In what circumstance would it not be required to be, except for grandfathered?
The additional use regulations for short-term vacation rentals only apply to residential districts and the PD district. So in the commercial districts, like OR,
They would
Office
not be
Residential,
required.
Central Commercial, and Downtown District, there would be no additional requirement for an owner to live on that property because it doesn't make sense. It's already commercially zoned. There aren't any neighbors to
Okay, so
protect in that
so the
case.
owner-occupied requirements apply only in residential areas?
Residential districts and the PD
And
district.
PD districts, which many times are residential.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are mixed.
So I'm a little concerned that we're trying to get at the definition of transient by stuffing a lot of definition into the definition of family. Because it looks to me like at least for the short-term vacation rentals that are in PD or residential areas, the owner must occupy, be a permanent resident of the premises, which we are defining kind of down well into the definition of family as being a place where someone resides on average at least 21 days per month over 12 months. Is that how we're getting at what we're, I mean, we're kind of getting at what's a transient, what's a short-term rental by saying a family has to live there 3/4 of the time.
Yes, that definition of family has been in our zoning ordinance for many, many years.
But we're now using it as a trigger to know how you are an owner occupant for a short-term rental.
That is true. It does give a list of criteria that helps staff in the interpretation and enforcement of that.
Okay, I'm for that. I'm for knowing how to know what is a short-term vacation rental. Because if you don't say what it is, then you can't regulate it properly, right? So would it be better for us to say that a short-term vacation rental is any property rented for less than a period of X days at a time?
It does already.
21.
That is a short-term vacation rental.
Well, except that you start to get into, you've basically said that a short-term vacation rental, to collapse the definition, is in the case of an owner-occupied short-term rental, is one where the family lives 75% of the time and it's available for rent 25% of the time.
It is when there's only a house on a lot. If there's a lot with a house and an accessory dwelling, then there can be a permanent short-term vacation rental on the property, as long as the owner resides in one of the two dwellings on the property.
Okay, but in the case of someone who's gonna have to vacate to rent it out, we are saying 21 days per month on a 12-month average.
What?
Yeah, that's the definition of
They have to
family.
live there
Yeah.
21 days?
Have I misunderstood?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm just
There-
wondering if there's not a better way for us to know when we are talking about a short-term vacation rental, besides this 21 days averaged over 12 months and all that, and why not just say a short-term vacation rental is anything available for less than 30 days?
It's 21.
It is defined by the municipal code as a dwelling unit that's rented out for 21 days or less. The use regulations for short-term vacation rentals are there that apply to residential neighborhoods in the PD district, because we've heard public input over the past year, particularly in Central Franklin, that there is a strong desire to have owner occupancy first and maintain a residential neighborhood first, rather than commercial uses in the residential
I agree with
neighborhoods.
all of that. I'm just trying to make sure that because I've had to litigate this in Nashville. And I just want to make sure that we have a very clear definition, because for every rule we make, there will be someone who tries to end run it or be clever about how they've arranged things for themselves. Are you satisfied that our municipal code and our short-term vacation rental fit hand in glove with the definitions of family and transient?
Yes, we have studied the issue. We think the two work together quite well. This may be one of the issues that we monitor as the zoning ordinance is adopted and implemented,
Okay.
that we return to the board in another year or so and look at how it's working for us, and if
Okay.
there are issues that we need to address to, revise.
Perfect segue for my last two questions. What are we doing to monitor who is a short-term rental and know where they are? We have a little over 100 properties with a license to do so now. I'd be willing to bet you there's more than that doing it. What mechanisms do we have, or are we going to get, to police who is doing Airbnb and short-term rental? And then what happens when there's non-compliance, either by way of complaints from neighbors about unruly guests, improper maintenance, or someone who has fibbed on their application and isn't really an owner occupant? What remedies do we have as a city to make sure that the rules that we have are enforced and that the public safety and welfare is looked after?
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. Verification, annual, all of our current licensed short-term vacation rentals, there's an annual verification between our revenue management office that tracks business licenses and our building and neighborhood services department that tracks the certificates of occupancy. We just completed our process of the verification to balance those two lists. And anyone who is found not in compliance, we have our usual enforcement process with notices of violation, allowing them to come into compliance to obtain their their business license and their certificate of occupancy for that use. Should they not comply with the notice of violation, then we proceed with our municipal court.
That's for people who are willing to come down here and say, hey, I'm doing this. I'm very much concerned about the people who aren't even bothering to do that. They're just throwing up an Airbnb ad and trying to stay below the radar.
When they come to our attention, then we are making contact with those property owners to verify. And the standard notice of violation, you either come into compliance with your business license and a certificate of occupancy, or you cease operation. I would also like to say that when, for everyone's information, when there are active complaints that happen on a Saturday night with a short-term vacation rental, whether it's a disturbing the peace type of violation or something like that, it would be more efficient if you notify the police department at the time that the violation is occurring, rather than waiting till the following Monday or Tuesday morning to notify us.
That's probably true, but what happens if we have, say, 3 separate incidents in a 90-day period where short-term vacation renters have made life unpleasant for neighbors?
Thank you. With 3 violations, we can bring that certificate of occupancy, that license to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for their permission to be revoked to operate a short-term vacation rental.
Is that something that we currently have the authority to do?
Yes.
Under
Yes.
state law, yeah.
I don't remember that ever happening.
We had one where that happened.
Okay, maybe, all right, well, I'm not trying to, I don't want to wait until we're being besieged with complaints about this. As I said, I had to litigate this in Nashville, and it's a little bit like kudzu. Once you got it, it's very difficult to cut back and get rid of. So I'm all for property owners being able to live, within the rules that we're giving them, make their home available. But I also am quite concerned about the impact that it can have upon stable residential communities and neighborhoods. Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, we're back to the original motion as amended, but I'm going to recognize Alderman Martin now.
Oh, what's the motion?
The original motion was to approve the zoning ordinance. Then it's been amended several times up to this point, and now I'm recognizing you. Do you have an amendment or a comment?
I have a comment about vacation rentals. There are two questions I have. The gentleman in the back came to us and said, there's something, I don't know where you got that, but there's something about that you must vacate your home.
No, sir, you're not recognized. Sit down.
No, yeah, I'll talk for you. You must vacate your home if you're going to rent it as a vacation rental. Is that correct?
Yep.
If you have a home and you are a permanent occupant of the home, when you rent a short-term vacation rental, you are renting the entire dwelling unit. So yes, if someone is doing that on a part-time basis out of their home that they live in, then they would vacate the premises, go stay with someone they know, a family member, and rent it out.
Well, could you use it as a bed and breakfast?
There is that's a separate use in the zoning ordinance, and there's an approval process to.
But you can stay there then.
That is a separate use, and there is a method to gaining approval of that. It involves going to the planning commission with a site plan and making sure there's adequate parking and some other criteria.
I don't want to mess up the reading. I want us to pass this reading, but we might want to look at that. I want to understand it. I don't understand it, so, and you don't have to explain it now. We'll talk about it later. Okay. The other thing that disturbs me is that the young lady that sat next to you, Mr. Fuson, said that she did not know that you had to have a permit to have a bed and breakfast, to have a vacation rental. And that disturbs me. She said she was told she did not need a permit. Now, that disturbs me, that other people may not know you have to do that. I don't understand that. Do you know anything about that?
I do not. There's certainly an awareness component. We have been focused on drafting the ordinance, making sure the regulations are compliant with state law. Once the ordinance is adopted, we can shift that focus to implementation and enforcement.
Okay. But I certainly am for passing it as it is, and then if there's something we need to talk about down the road.
I'm going to recognize Alderman Peterson for another amendment.
Yes.
Thank you.
She's the only one to get anything done.
Right here's the wall
Yes,
hole.
in previous discussion, some of the comments have been, by me, have been to amend the building type. And so I'm going to take the two ideas, but I'm going to do the simplest one first, I hope. I want to move to amend the house building type to remove the words from the side facade facing a frontage provision. To remove the words including side or wraparound porches. This is the one where if you have a corner lot, then the side that's not your frontage, but the side that's facing the street also would be, as stated in 6.3, side facade facing a frontage has the words including side or wraparound porches. I'm requesting to remove that including side or wraparound porches from the side facade facing a frontage.
Second.
Appropriate motion, appropriate amendment and second. Any discussion on that?
Yes, sir.
Alderman Berger.
I'd like to hear from planning on this.
Okay,
If-
that's an easy request, planning.
If we keep that, you obviously put that in there for a reason. So if we keep that side facade or wraparound porch on only a corner lot, is that to help do away with, sometimes when I'm driving down the street, I see a brick house and I turn and it's on the corner, there's this big brick wall basically on the side of a house with 2 or 3 tiny little windows, and that's all you see is this massive brick. Is that one of the reasons?
Yes, it is. There are some great examples in our community where the developer and the builder have paid attention to those side facades that face a street and put in either a wraparound porch, similar windows, bricked-in windows if it's a brick house to give some architectural interest and thoughtful design to those sides of houses that really have the same prominence that a front of the house has. And they're very visible and prominent on intersections.
I think that's one of the things I asked you about a couple years ago, because that is not pleasant to look at in a neighborhood. It becomes a large brick wall, and I think we need to do something with corner lots so we don't end up with these large brick walls. And so therefore, I cannot support this amendment.
May I make a comment? If you notice, I did not ask to remove the entire request for the proposed zoning ordinance. I still am keeping in there, shall have a similar level of architectural detailing and window alignments. In other words, the only thing that I'm asking to remove is the requirement that you have a porch on your side.
That's a better description of it.
Yeah,
You're eliminating
that's not what I
porches,
heard.
otherwise it doesn't change.
That's
Let
not
me
what
stop
I-
just a second.
That's not what I heard.
You know, I hate that we're going down so many rat holes tonight, and we're nitpicking this thing to death, and we've been working on it for 2 years. So just keep that in mind as we keep moving on. So any other comment on the amendment that Alderman Peterson made?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Mr. Mayor, I respectfully disagree with that comment because I believe that this is our duty to nitpick this thing through in a way before we pass it to make sure we know what we have in it. Because I do believe there are some things here that this is the proper time to do the amendments. And if we have to be here to 10, 11 o'clock to do the proper amendments, I'm willing to do that. Don't want to be, but I would willing to do that because I think it's that important. Well, I don't want to come back a year later and clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up. I believe some of these amendments are extremely important.
Maybe my rat hole description was not appropriate, I apologize for that. But I think every meeting that we've had, we have commented that there were gonna be things in this ordinance, and that we're gonna have a cleanup in a year. So, any other comments on Alderman Peterson's amendment to the motion? If not, I'm ready for us to vote.
I just want to make the comment that I think the side porches and facades are very attractive in neighborhoods, so I will not be supporting, I know the windows in the design would probably still be there, but if you want a porch on that particular corner, I think you should have the option of doing that.
May I say?
But it doesn't take away the
May I say, no, this does not take away the
Okay,
option.
okay.
It takes away the requirement, so they still have the option. Anyone can still have an option to do this. They don't even have to be on a corner lot.
Okay, that's good.
No,
That
I'm
helps us.
sorry. Okay.
I wish. All right, any other comments or questions? Ready to vote on the amendment concerning, let's see, that's like 6.3.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, raise your hand. Motion passes 6 to 2. Okay, we're back to the original motion as amended.
That was the simple one.
That was the simple one, yes, okay.
All right, Alderman Peterson.
Okay. Again, this is on the house building type, 6.3. And this one, I want to move to amend the house building type to remove the entry features provision that it says it shall have a covered porch, covered stoop, or a balcony over the entrance. Now, again, please let me say, I'm only asking that the shall be taken out, really, but I don't know whether they.
What about may?
May, I could go with may.
So your motion is may. Go ahead.
May is not enforceable.
Exactly. That's precisely the point. Thank you, Ms. Dannenfelser.
If I could continue then, since we've been told that is not.
Would you clarify your amendment?
Yes, sir. I'm moving to amend the house building type, entry features that says shall have a covered porch, covered stoop, or a balcony over the entrance. And the reason that I'm asking that all of that be removed is because it says shall there. In other words, it still would absolutely be permitted, and I'm not somebody who doesn't like porches. I'm just wanting to continue to have the option for anyone who does not wish to build their house with this that is required right here.
Is there a second?
Second.
Appropriate motion, second. Open for discussion.
Do I want to be recognized?
Yes.
It is getting late,
Yeah,
so
it's
we would
getting
like
late.
to
I don't
recognize you.
Here's what I think on Ann's amendment there. I think that if you don't require it, somebody somewhere will build without the porch. Then, 6 months later, you've got the person coming in that's complaining because the city allowed someone to build without the porch, and now they want the porch. And I think, I personally sort of think I like the wraparound garages, but that's gone, the wraparound porches. But I think that we need to require certain building things. And the reason I say that is because using my house as a personal example, it would have been a lot better if the balcony had been covered. It is not. And therefore, I've been there long enough to know that that's the case, but I think that we would be better off to keep that in here and require that, and knowing that we're probably potentially heading off a problem at some point in time. rather than addressing an issue that we could have resolved early on. I will not vote for that amendment.
Mr. Mayor, could I make a response? Even though, as we're talking now, most of the people who are building new houses are using porches, there are many in this city that do not have that and have not, I mean, after 30 years have not said, I want to build a cover on my porch. But the thing is that in the case where somebody wants to come in, and let me say to you, it's not just houses that were built, 20, 30 years ago. There are some houses that have been built in recent times in places like Berry Farms and Ladd Park that have not followed this requirement. So it's not to say that anybody who wants to have something that looks like this can certainly find many places that they could purchase something with this. I've also found that in other areas of this county, there are not restrictions on what the front of your house looks like to this extent. And I'm talking about, as I say, we have not done it, but places that are having more expensive houses being built now than the city of Franklin is currently having built. They do not have any requirement on entry features like this, because I have looked at some under construction and they do not have this. Again, if anyone wishes to have a porch, there is no reason to not build it this way or to buy one that's built this way. Again, it's the option that perhaps someone would not wish this that will be taken away from them.
Any other comments? You ready to vote? Everybody clear that we're voting on eliminating the covered entry feature? I think that'd be an appropriate way to say it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, raise your hand.
The porch people have it.
Porch people have it, so it passes
Still gonna
5-3.
You're still gonna get,
That
brick walls.
amendment, I'm sorry, the amendment fails 5-3.
get brick
Did I
walls.
see, I didn't see the hands of people who voted against it. I just wondered.
Against porch people.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the original motion, which has now been amended, and I'm gonna recognize Alderman Berger.
I have an amendment. Okay, I do have a couple amendments, but, first of all, I want to address the short-term rental. And I think this is really important because this could have possibly happened with, I have one example and maybe two even right now. That if you have a short-term rental and if this passes, as written, that if you have any change, then your short-term rental goes away for the people that are grandfathered in. And I would like to add in subsection 2.2.4, and amend the short-term vacation rental to add, if ownership of a short-term vacation rental changes to a family member, person related by blood, marriage, civil union, or adoption, grandfathering protections will continue. That could be someone who gets divorced, or et cetera. There will be a change. I want to protect the people and family members when there is a change. So I would like to add that, amend that section 2.2.4. Again, it would read, if ownership of a short-term vacation rental changes to a family member, persons related by blood, marriage, civil union, or adoption, grandfathering protections will continue.
Appropriate amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Speedy. Any other comments? Alderman Martin?
If that should happen, they are certainly welcome to come back and apply for a vacation rental. It's not, it doesn't mean they could never have it again. But I think we need this because I don't think we can keep up with who dies and who inherits something. I think that's getting in the weeds.
Any other comments? Ready to vote?
Wait a second. My understanding, though, is that if we don't put this amendment in, they will not be able to come back in and get that short-term vacation because the new zoning ordinance would ban it. So in this situation.
They just have to live there.
It will.
That if my.
If they're grandfathered.
It doesn't ban it, it just,
That's true.
they'd have to follow the current rules.
That's correct. It wouldn't ban it. It would just mean that if someone new came in, that short-term vacation rental would need to comply with the rules in effect at that time that they came in.
They would just have to live there, just like the
That
parents
changes
did.
it substantially.
Whoa, wait a second.
When a
So,
So if, essentially what this means is that over time, a non-resident short-term vacation rental could remain a short-term vacation rental, but if after a sale, only if the new owner occupied the property
And applied.
All right.
and made the application.
So this one gets a little complicated, but state law addresses grandfathering for short-term vacation rentals specifically. And in this case, they've thoughtfully thought through those grandfathering protections. And it says that existing permitted short-term vacation rentals may continue when there's a rule change, under the rules that were in effect when those came through in the first place and they were being used as such, until there's a change of ownership, that it's sold to someone else, that it's transferred to someone else, that it's been abandoned for 30 months, or that they have 3 violations of local laws.
Okay, so let me clarify, if I may, that I have 2 examples in my ward. One is a person who owns a short-term vacation rental. She's a legal resident here, lives in Florida so many months out of the year. In 3 years, she intends to sell it to her daughter and son-in-law. Once she does sell that property to her son and daughter-in-law, who then will run it as continue what the mother has done with the short-term vacation rental, they're out. Because they have to then move into that home and actually have that as their resident. That I don't want to happen. I think that's unfair. That's not protective of people's property rights and free market. That is very intrusive and that's very heavy-handed government regulation. I don't know how we do that. The other example is a couple getting divorced. That will change, and that vacation rental is going to be given to her. It will be changed in their names, and it will go to her. That is a substantial change. She will no longer be able to do that, and that's going to be part of her income. I cannot support this the way it is. That's why I'm bringing this amendment.
Any other comments on Alderman Berger's amendment?
Just a comment, again, let's just go back to say, short-term vacation rentals are really commercial uses. And they are in residential areas where we are saying that they would have to conform with the rules. If you're a short-term vacation rentals in agricultural, in OR, in, let's see, a central commercial, and is NC, no, okay, I've already said them, I believe.
All right.
So
May I-
if it's going to mean that, again, a commercial use would not be grandfathered into a residential area.
I'd like to also clarify that the lady who's selling it in 3 years, they're building up to that, lives on 14 acres.
Well, she
in
could be,
a
that could
state-
be ag, is it agricultural?
In a state residential. No, it's state residential. The other person being divorced is state residential on 3 acres.
Okay, any other comments? Ready to vote?
Yes.
Everybody clear on the amendment that Alderman Berger has made? All in fa-
I'm sorry.
Alderman Blanton, you have a
Well, if
clarification?
it's against state law, what good does it do for us
It's
to
not against
vote?
So the state law provides protections to short-term vacation rentals should a city change their rules about short-term vacation rentals. It's specific to that use. The impact of this amendment is that potentially those commercial uses get passed on through the family indefinitely and are never required to come into compliance with any new rules that are put in place after that time.
I hear you, but how are we negating?
We are not.
So cities can provide additional protections. They just can't provide less protections. So allowing a family member to be given the property or to buy the property gives an added protection
Okay,
to the
thank you.
short-term
Sorry.
vacation rental.
Okay, everybody clear? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes 7-1.
Wait a minute, excuse me.
I'm sorry, did I miss you?
I didn't understand.
Okay,
I'd like to revote on that, because I was voting for the ordinance.
well, let
and
me
not the
clarify what we're
amendments.
voting
I
on, and
forgot
we'll
the
vote again.
amendment. Okay.
We were voting on short-term vacation rentals when the family member, person related by blood, marriage, civil union, blah, 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 that grandfathering protections will continue if it changes to, if the ownership changes to a family. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so it passes 6-2. Alderman Berger, you said you had another amendment.
Yes, I do. So I know that people have spoken tonight about having people be the primary residents of those short-term rentals. I understand there needs to be some additional protections, and that they've brought forth some ideas that have been presented and written into this new ordinance. And it's been written into the ordinance. So I just take issue with some of these things. And I think the short vacation rental
You've got an
should be,
amendment?
should be a property, yeah, my amendment would be that the property owner must be a permanent resident of the city or live within 25 miles of the short-term vacation rentals. Rather than having them be a permanent resident of that vacation rental. So we're saying you have to live in and be a permanent resident of that vacation rental and just vacate it when you want to rent it out. I am asking that we control it less intrusively, but that we do control it by saying the property owner must be a permanent resident of the city and live within 25 miles of the short-term vacation rental. Now,
Is there a
one
second?
of the reasons, I have to explain this so you understand the motion.
Is there a second before you
Second.
explain?
All
Okay,
right,
go
thank
ahead and
you.
explain.
The motion also is there to protect what I've been hearing from some of the downtown people is that we don't want these corporations coming in, buying up properties. I get that. We don't want somebody living in California or Arizona coming in here and saying, oh, this is a quaint city. We're going to buy up 2 properties and rent them out. We want to know who our people are here. We want to know that we have buy-in and into our community. Then we would have better buy-in to our community and better control, and we would know these people if they are residents, legal residents of our city, and live within 25 miles, which is already in our zoning ordinance, of the short-term rental.
Mayor, can I make a comment real quick?
Oh, there you are. I didn't know who was speaking to me.
Sorry, I know it's like going.
Oh, I hear you now, yes, go ahead.
So what that amendment really needs to say is we're amending 5.1.4 R2 to delete R2
Replacing it.
and replacing it with what you said, because
Yes.
otherwise you're keeping in R2 that
Do you want
says,
me to read this exact as it should be?
that, right,
All right.
that would be better.
I also had something else, and I think that it should go along with this one, but I'm going to leave it separate. Amend paragraph 5.1.4R, short-term vacation rentals, by deleting clause 2 and replacing it with, the property owner must be a permanent resident of the city or live within 25 miles of the short-term vacation rental. And amend the MNC 13-203 to add the same sentence.
I have a question.
Who's that?
And that's the end of your motion, and who was it that seconded?
For now.
Okay, and you're okay with that?
For now.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
okay with
I have a
open for
question.
comments.
Does-
Vice Mayor.
Does 5.1.4 R2 apply only in the half-moon sections or to all?
To the half-moon
To
section.
the half-moon sections. So it sounds like that's actually relaxing the standard, not tightening it.
That is true.
Okay, because in the full moon sections, which are ag or 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 CC or DD, there's no ownership or residency requirement whatsoever.
Correct.
They're just commercial. You can own them, you can be a business, you can be a REIT from California and own them as is, and this amendment wouldn't change anything. Right?
No.
So 5.1.4 R2, this amendment would relax the ownership to permit someone who does not live in the property, but who lives within 25 miles, whereas the ordinance as written requires the owner to
Yeah.
occupy the property.
Correct.
But only in those half-moon sections, which are all residential or planned. Well, I think it's, I mean, I'm,
it out.
okay, I'm against the amendment then, because to me, it is more important that in a residential section, that the owner of the short-term vacation rental be the occupant, and not just an investor who happens to live in the neighborhood. You could have someone own 10. They're just a landlord. They're just running a business with 2, 3, 10 short-term vacation rentals. It's more important in the residential sections that the owners be the occupants. If we were changing it to require that all short-term vacation rentals be locally owned, I can see that. But that's not what's happening, because it's being amended at 5.1.4 R2. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, then we'll change it to be all.
Alderman Martin.
You support that?
First of all, why would a person that lived 25 miles from here be a resident of the city?
No, not the city.
That's what you said.
No, it's not. I said a permanent
Or.
resident of the city.
Permanent resident
Or a
Okay,
permanent
all right.
resident within
Okay.
25 miles.
All right, the 25 miles doesn't mean a thing to me. I don't know people that live 25 miles away. And if they run,
Have you ever been 25 miles away?
Margaret, it's already in the
Not
ordinance.
often.
It's
Not
already-
often.
It's already in the ordinance, it's 25 miles.
Well, whatever. I will not
just wanna go
support
home.
anything but how the ordinance is written. I think we're diluting it, as Alderman McClendon said, and the whole point to keep it from being a hotel in our residential neighborhoods, whether it's your neighborhood, Bev, or yours, Dana, or yours, or mine. We don't want a hotel there. It's simply commercial. Unless I'm living there.
Unless it's yours.
Okay, does anybody else want to address
Well,
the amendment?
Right, I can see the potential of I think we sort of heard some of that tonight, a property owner who may live in, you know, Murray County or somewhere, is that 25 miles? But, and then buy property.
Used to be.
Buy property in Franklin, not one, but several. And therefore, it becomes, rather than being a affordable rental property for a local resident who's living and working in Franklin, it becomes a business for that particular property owner with those 3 or 4 properties, because people can do that. You know, if you have rental houses, I'm sure there's people in the audience with rental properties, and they could turn all of those rental properties into this situation and take away opportunity for long-term residents to live in those properties as rentals.
Pearl, I would say that that wouldn't happen if I am allowed 2 more amendments here. That would eliminate the amount of ownership and the location of ownerships within a radius that I have to offer yet.
More amendments.
Alderman Speedy.
So quick question, has nothing to do with like Mr. Fuson's property, which is office residential?
Correct.
Okay.
It's an office.
Any other comments? You ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Show of hands. Opposed? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Fails 7 to 1.
All right, another protection if you care to have it, but you may not. You may see it as more intrusive, but I do not. Would be to, the motion would be to add a new clause, Clause 5 in 5.1.4. R would be to add Clause 5 that reads, except for accessory dwellings, a short-term vacation rental shall not be permitted on any lot within a radius of 600 feet of a lot containing another short-term vacation rental.
Is there a second? The amendment fails because of lack of a second.
Okay.
We're all the way back to the original motion now.
Well, have another one. One
Okay.
more, my last one. The problem that people were talking about, having too many vacation rentals in an area, never got any protection on that one. So we could also add an amendment. I don't have an amendment to offer at this moment, but I will if there is interest in it. And it would be to add an amendment that would limit the number of short-term vacation rentals a property owner or resident of our area could operate, such as 2, and I would think it would be, 2 would be a good number to put in there. So therefore, if there's currently, if Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones owns 2, he would not be able to apply for any additional short-term rentals in Franklin. If he already owned 3, he would be grandfathered in. And so I've heard that you want to limit these. Just saying.
Mayor.
I don't understand that.
Is that an amendment or
It's
is that a wish
it's
list?
It's a question to see if I would like a discussion to see if there is a interest in me making an amendment
Is there a second to her?
I would second it.
for discussion.
Did anybody make a second?
I second it for her discussion.
It seems to me that having defeated the motion with respect to owner occupied in the neighborhoods, we're now back to if you can only live in one place, because we have the 21 days out of every month, we have the owner occupied, we have you have to live in the short-term vacation rental if it's in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Once we're in commercial zones, this is a car wash, this is a laundromat,
We don't
this
care.
is a law office, this is whatever. It's not the same. So there's no reason to tell someone they can only own 1 or 2 or 3.
Really?
God bless them, good luck, own 10. They're in commercial areas, not neighborhoods.
Not all commercial areas.
Okay.
Well, they're the only ones that are not now required to be owner occupied are in ag and what I would call business-oriented districts. Am I right?
OR.
Or PUD.
No, they can't be in a PD. In a PD, they have to be owner occupied.
The ones
Oh, that's
that
right.
are not required to be owner-occupied are ag, OR, CC, and DD.
And CC stands for?
Central Commercial,
And
and DD
DD
is Downtown District.
Okay, so in the areas that are predominantly business, they may be retail, they may be commercial, whatever, but they're not strictly residential or predominantly residential necessarily. DD might be a little different, but,
That's right, they allow commercial and residential uses.
okay, so I don't see an advantage to telling the private market that, well, you could own 5 office buildings, but we're gonna put a cap on the number of short-term vacation rentals in those districts that you can own. That doesn't seem to me to
Okay.
really help anything.
That's all I asked for is a discussion.
Alderman Martin, did you have a comment?
No.
Okay,
Thank
any
you.
other comments?
No, I just
That was
wanted
a
to.
motion with a second, though, Mayor.
I just wanted the
I'm ready to
comment.
vote. All in
Okay.
favor of,
No, there was no motion.
Yeah, you made a motion and it was seconded, that's
you
why I
made a
spoke
motion,
to
it
it.
was seconded.
No, that's not totally correct. She asked for some.
Discussion.
Some discussion on this,
Not
and
my
there was a
motion.
second
For the
to
discussion.
allow the discussion.
Correct.
Would you restate your original
She did not
You
make.
can
a motion.
withdraw the motion if there is.
I will withdraw my motion for discussion, which we already had.
Okay, great.
That's fine.
Now we're
So-
back to the
rest of the
original.
original motion? Okay, anybody else want to add anything else?
So we're voting as a whole.
We're voting with the motion with all the amendments, and I've lost count 5. So all in favor of the original motion with the 5 amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, I'd say that
Didn't
was
vote.
unanimous.
So I want to make sure that the floodplain component get pulled out for passage.
That's right.
It's included as it is. You've directed us to go
To
work
direct it,
on a
okay.
process to review the entirety of our flood regulations.
Just want to make sure
Yes.
that got captured.
Okay, we're going to item number 5, which is a public hearing, consideration ordinance 2019-38, an ordinance amending Title 14, Chapter 2 of the Franklin Municipal Code to change the adoption date of the pending Franklin zoning ordinance.
This is simply to update the 2008 date of our current zoning ordinance to reflect the new adoption date for our proposed zoning ordinance in the municipal code.
And I have no speaker cards.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Appropriate motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 6, Resolution 2019-110, a resolution to initiate an application for a revision of the McKay's Mill PUD development plan on behalf of Ali Hamari, Nashville K-9.
Move for approval.
Second.
Appropriate motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oops.
Just
Alderman Speedy.
point of clarification, discussion, that he is an animal service provider,
Oh, yeah.
that you're not obtaining, acquiring, purchasing a dog. Otherwise, that would be against our pet store ordinance. I just want to make that clarification, because if, he needs to know, he's a business owner, probably signing a very long-term lease agreement.
He can't
And
sell dogs.
He doesn't sell dogs.
Can't sell dogs, yes.
I also have a question.
Okay.
Is it clear in our ordinance or our PUD revision that this is to be a business conducted entirely indoors? Is that in the writing?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
And I
Any
guess
other
my last comment, just being a sore loser, would be that I seriously think this is a consideration where if he wanted to expand down the road and offered the ability to purchase a protection dog or a dog for mental health, anxiety, special needs children, whatever, that I think it would be a shame if we forced that purchase to be done outside of our city limits.
Animal loving city.
It's always done that.
Any other comments? You ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Did I hear anybody? Passes unanimously. Number 7, professional services agreement, City of Franklin contract number 2019-0313 with Windrow Phillips to provide lobbying and advisory services on behalf of the City of Franklin. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Peterson. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 8, consideration professional services agreement with ECS Southeast LLP for construction, engineering, testing, and inspection services for the municipal services complex improvements in an amount not to exceed $40,810.
Move for approval.
Appropriate motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
Seconded by Alderman Barnhill. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Consideration of mayor's reappointment of Kelly Harwood and Gary Vogren to the Franklin Public Arts Commission.
Move for approval.
Appropriate motion. Seconded by who? Alderman Bransford. Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 10, consideration of appointment of Jeff Fleischhauer to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Move for approval?
Appropriate motion.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Blanton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Any other things that we need to consider? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to amend that motion.
Oh, which one is that now? But
See you, Clyde.
You've been recognized one too many times.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye. We're dismissed.
Happy Thanksgiving.